Hi there, and welcome back to the Beyond Product podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Mikanovsky, and in this podcast, we're diving deep into what goes into making a truly successful and impactful digital product. We're exploring the unspoken and behind the scenes and everything beyond the surface of product development. Please give a warm welcome to Chris Moffatt Armes, the founder of PoliTraQ, an all-in-one advocacy management platform designed for government relationship professionals. Chris, we're thrilled to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You probably also learned a lot through this process of creating technology that helps government-related initiatives and anything related to government. How do you see technology actually affecting, political outcomes?
I think the more access to information and the more access to information in a way that can actually be used, the better it is for the political process. If governments are able to operate without having to be transparent, and I mean, we can discuss how deep transparency goes, but just simple case in point, the very fact that I can go on the parliamentary website right now and pull up every word that has been said in the House of Commons in the last 35 years doesn't sound like a lot at first, but then you go to other jurisdictions where you can't even find out if the legislature's sitting today or what they're going to be talking about, and you realize like the less information folks have, the less they're able to keep government in check, the less able they are to influence it, and it becomes a matter of who has the resources to track it. I spoke with a client once who was a lobbying firm, and I'm like, yeah, we can send you the transcripts. We can get you the committee transcripts as soon as they're available. And they're like, great, because right now we just have to get 10 interns in and have them sit down and watch committee every day and write notes. And that's great if you have those resources. But if you're a small nonprofit or an industry association, or we've got a couple labor unions as well, resources are tight, and the folks who might be most positively affected by being able to communicate their needs and wants with government are the folks who don't have the resources to do it. And the more that we can make that available, the more we can make it accessible. Even as simple as our pricing strategy was built knowing that a lot of the folks I'm going after are not-for-profits and industry associations, and budgets are very tight.
Right.
I would rather help them be able to work more effectively and speak more effectively than help a firm bill another 20 or 30K this year.
I see.
You end up you find like this is what motivates you, and you work towards it.
Yeah.
But no, the more information that's available, sunlight's the best disinfectant, and ensuring that information is available and accessible is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know how governments are usually working very slow, and they have all of these budgets, and sometimes they change hands because of change of government. I want to maybe hear more about the positive side of things. Is there any good stories that are coming out about having this data and how it can actually impact in a good way on our political and government institutions?
The first example that really comes to mind right now was an email that I got back from a client who she was up in Ottawa with one of her clients and was going through my newsletter and found out, oh, we're supposed to be at a press conference in 45 minutes. Minister's office never told us that. And so because she had all of the information, in PoliTraQ, she had all of the contact details, she had all of the material she needed to write her remarks, to reach out to so it ended up working out. But if they hadn't seen that, if they didn't have that information available, then it could have definitely damaged the the organization's perception within government. If they show up to a press conference and they're not ready at all to go out in front of the cameras, or if they don't even show up at all. And so where I see the most kind of opportunity there is by providing that information, ensuring that folks are able to act upon it. We hear from our customers regularly that, oh man, I never would have thought to stand that particular committee, and it turned out they were talking about exactly what we're worried about right now. And so, but there's just so much going on that it's like trying to drink from a fire hose, and you're going to miss stuff.
So maybe the lesson here is don't wait for the public sector to tell you about these things, but be more proactive in the private sector and using a tool like yours to actually learn about these things and being able to do that. You also mentioned to us about the team of Obama's elections. I thought that was a great story, maybe about how they have done something with the data that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a platform out of the states, mostly for constituency and voter management, called Nation Builder. It's a phenomenal story. It's one of the great success stories of businesses born out of politics. And if I remember correctly, the founders were the 2012 Obama campaign data room. They were probably, and I mean, I'm looking back on the 2012 race. It's amazing. Like, Republicans were still going door to door with paper lists, which, I mean, last time I went door knocking here in Canada was how we were doing it as well. The Obama team, on the other hand, looked at every issue in the country, every voter in the country, and ranked them on how likely they were to vote for Obama. They knew exactly which issues concerned them. They knew exactly how to get them that information. And as a result, they were able to, really move the needle because they knew exactly who to go to for each vote that they were going to try and win in each state. It meant they could focus their efforts where there was going to be, more net gain if they were able to get their voters out. It was such an incredible, achievement. And then watching how that company has built itself out since then, it really shows like there's a lot of data that's created during political campaigns and whatnot that can be used to mobilize voters and to activate voters. It can also be used for nefarious purposes. But in turn, looking at how just ensuring that information is available to your team can make you that much more effective in your job.
And saying that, I would probably think that there's some data science going on based on that data, and maybe even some AI models that are helping them. Do you think this is something that is coming into? Do you use AI already, or is that something in your future?
Yeah, so the platform itself does not use any AI models at this point. We are looking at training and developing some of our own. It's very, very early days. I would hesitate to even say it's on the roadmap at this point, but it is something we're working towards. Our challenge right now has been open AI, and I respect why they do it. I understand why they did it. I agree with it with where we are currently. OpenAI has been very clear that their platform cannot be used for any attempts to influence the political process, which includes legal lobbying, it includes campaigning.
So they're protecting themselves.
It goes beyond that. I mean, the ways that you could use these tools in that environment are not in and amongst themselves good or bad. It's how they're going to be used. I look at the potential to use something like GPT, if it's fully trained on everything that's been said in the House, being able to ask it, hey, over the last 30 years, what has been the general thought around this particular issue, or how many times has this come up? Stuff like that, where you don't have to know exactly what it is that you're looking for. I could see it being hugely beneficial. As a former staffer, we used to do these things called 10 percenters. So, under a very old Canadian law, members of parliament can mail for free. They can send mail to everyone in their riding for free. But you can only send the same piece to 10% of that riding. And that letter or that newsletter or whatnot must be at least 50% different from any other that you're putting out at the same time. And so I could see, something like that being used to massively speed up the process of making 10 percenters.
Right.
I could also see it being used for incredibly nefarious purposes, whether that's astroturfing, whether that's trying to mislead folks with very convincing looking news or images. Like there's a number of ways this can go bad, and I understand why there's hesitancy. I won't go so far as to say I agree, because it does feel kind of final if you're saying yes, I agree. I understand why, and right now it is the right choice.
It's really interesting because to me it goes AI divided to two things. One of them is the mechanism, and the other thing is the data that goes into it and the data that comes out of that. So I would agree about the data that goes in and comes out. The mechanism by itself is just another algorithm on how
Yeah,
to.
it's a tool.
It's a tool,
The
exactly.
tool itself, it's not good or bad inherently.
Yeah.
It's how it could be used.
So do you think that governments? There are some talks already about some governments that are trying. I don't know if to ban it, but to restrict it or whatever it is. I'm not sure what is it in Canada exactly. Is there a risk there?
I believe, and I would have to double check, but I believe there's plans for like some sort of working group that would come up with a series of guidelines. I remember Minister Champagne announced something about that not too long ago. The exact details of it, though, escape me right now.
Hmm.
But and right there, I mean, I don't know to what extent the folks in Parliament right now would truly understand AI. I don't know how many of us truly understand exactly, how it's all working. Like we know what it can do, but like the actual mechanism underneath it, perhaps, I'm sure our levels of understanding differ. Uh, and that alone, I mean, as soon as you tell government, yeah, it's a black box, and and stuff comes out, they're going to be very hesitant, and they should be. You know, yes, we want government that's willing to accept new technologies and to look at new opportunities and solutions as they emerge. But you also kind of want them to be that source of stability, that they're not going to flip back and forth between, oh yeah, we're all about AI this week, and last week we were all about Web3, and the week before that we were all. It's like, no, pick a lane. You don't need to still be using a Commodore 64, but I'm okay with you being a little slow to pick up here.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's probably a slower adopter, but we're
Hmm.
not in a country where like the internet is forbidden or Facebook or other things are forbidden. We are in a country that we adopt new technologies and then we
Hmm.
see what's the harmful that they can handle and what's not. Do you think there is a way that we can build a social responsible AI in the political or government area?
I think if we can, it would be something that I would see coming out of the bureaucracy and not necessarily out of the political side. I think the incentive structure when you're working in politics is, when you're on campaigns, it's all about what can we do to win this campaign? And then once you've won, it's what can I do to win the next campaign? And that's not always necessarily, like, it can be, but it's not, very rarely does that align with everyone else's best interests as well. And so expecting it to come out of that environment, I would be very hesitant, just because the incentive structure isn't there in the same way. Something that's coming out of the bureaucracy, where these folks are in those roles for much longer. It's the more of a steady state. You're not going to have the swings back and forth, after, before and after elections. Like, I think you're more likely to get more usable, for the broader population, more usable sorts of inputs or use cases for AI.
Right, right, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we'll see what what the future is going to give us, but we definitely have to be with our hands on the pulse here to finger on the pulse to really see if we can impact that as well. And maybe if you wear back your product manager hat, what would you say? What would you say will be the things that we have to equip ourselves to create, good products that have greater social impact?
I mean, it always comes down to understanding what it is that you think that the product can be used for and should be used for, and then understanding how it's actually being used and ensuring that those remain in alignment. I personally have tried, and largely we've been able to succeed, taking an approach of, listen, as long as what you're doing is legal, I don't care if I agree or disagree with your use case for the platform. I know I have customers that are advocating in directions and on issues where I would vehemently disagree with them, and that's a good thing. That's that is something that we should encourage and should be able to work across political divides and work across, because at the end of the day, we likely agree on most things, at very least, that there are things that we could do better, and we just have very different views of how to do that. That being said, I have once had to say, like, no, I will not do business with your organization because of the type of work that you're doing,
Mm. Okay.
because I felt that the what we were going to be offering to them would have been a net negative as a whole, improving their ability to go out and spread their message.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, choosing a client is sometimes not something that we, many founders, they don't choose their clients. They kind of like everyone that is going to pay, we're going to
Hmm.
do work with them. So choosing your client is also important. Alignment with your vision, right?
And this literally had to be like a core value issue that kept me from doing business with them. You know,
Yeah.
we should be able to have differing views, and I encourage that. When those views cross over, certain lines, I think there, as the founder, there's a responsibility that that I put this thing out into the world
Yeah.
to help folks influence the political process.
Yeah.
I need to ensure that at very least they're not crossing. There's only a couple red lines, but this organization crossed it, and I
Hmm.
could not, in good conscience, work with them as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us now maybe a bit more about where you are with PoliTraQ. What's the stage that you are right now, and what's your plan for the future?
Yeah, I mean, we're in market. We're looking to expand both our head count and our user base. We're eyeing international expansion as well. Obviously, the American market's one that we would love to enter, but there's I'd say roughly 30 markets that I'd be interested in bringing PoliTraQ to. Most of them are either other Commonwealth countries or countries that have looked to Canada, the UK, Australia, etc., in designing their own lobbyist registry and lobbyist codes of conduct,
Mm,
and seeing that there's similarities in the way that the business is practiced, and similarities in kind of overall approaches,
yeah.
make those kind of natural environments for us to enter.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar, different places around the world, or even in Canada, I know that like Quebec has different law system versus the other countries that are more like the UK,
Yep.
or forefathers that came from the UK.
Yep. Or I mean, you look at I believe at least Northwest Territories and Nunavut. I don't think the Yukon, but don't quote me on it. Have a completely different system of government where there aren't two or more parties fighting. It's a consensus model, and they,
Oh,
as a group, come to a decision.
interesting. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very interesting. So some of your clients are for profit, and some of them are non for profit, I assume. And
Yeah.
how do they? How do you get with your revenue model and with your licensing model? How do you get them to say yes, we need this, even if they're for a non for profit?
I mean, the biggest thing was knowing that price was going to be something that they were sensitive to, looking at other platforms that were out there and going, can we provide the same or better service at a lower rate that they would actually be able to afford?
Hmm.
And kind of I said earlier, I'd much rather help an industry association or a charity be better able to communicate with elected officials than help a firm book another 15 grand in revenue.
Mm, mm,
And so part of it's been the folks that we're reaching out to tend to be within those spaces. It's a numbers game, and there's more GR professionals in house than there are as consultants, and there's more entities that are registered and active
mhm.
that fall into that kind of not for profit or charitable or other sector industries.
Right, right. And how do you keep the platform up to date with changing legislators, changing legislations? What do you do there?
We've got an extensive network of scrapers that help us collect the information, process it, and make it available. Part of because I was in the sector for so long, I know the sources, I know where folks are going, and we have a rule with our customers: if we don't currently offer it, and you need a data source, if you're willing to make it open to everyone else on the platform, we'll
Mhm.
just add it. If you want it as a custom build, we can do that too.
Uh-huh.
And then encouraging folks to think along those lines
Hmm.
gets them, like it's a great way of scouting all those other, jurisdictions or other locales that I don't necessarily know where all of that's. I know roughly what I'd be looking for, but not where. Uh, and finding out from them, like, oh yeah, we need this. Cool, let's build it.
Yeah.
And just being really responsive on that front, just helping to collect it, collect all those sources because I may only have the one client in a jurisdiction now, but one can become 100, and using that first one to kind of learn the ropes a little bit,
Mm.
it helps.
Yeah. Do you get them to pay you to do that, or do you say no, they're not paying for that? They will pay like any other clients, and I will do it
So
because I want the extension to that market.
yeah, so what we've done is essentially each year, like we've been kind of running this both as a side project and then now as a full time thing for a couple of years now, and just kind of in phases. The first customers that came on board, they pay one rate.
Mm.
And it was a flat rate for the year, as many seats as they, and that does not go up.
Mm.
I've told Joel they are my Costco hot dogs. You will not raise that price
Okay.
because if they were willing to trust me when this was the first sales call I was on,
Right.
you know, there's no way I'm going to go back to that person and say you have to pay me more money now.
Right.
They've already paid me. They were the test subjects that allowed this to grow. So what we've tended to do is as we roll out new versions and stuff, we adjust our prices moving forward, and that way we can still recognize that the folks who got us to this point have contributed in ways far beyond the revenue that they've generated.
Right.
I'd much rather grow our revenue by bringing in new clients than trying to squeeze the folks we already have.
That's a great way to look at that and to do that. I also had these issues in the past, and some of the issues were actually the other way around, where the first clients were paying too much, and then we wanted to reduce the price. And then how do you justify that? Did you have to deal with something like that?
I had one such incident. Part of it was we signed an agreement with one of the associations that actually represents government relations practitioners. So it's the industry association that lobbies on behalf of the GR industry.
Hmm.
We signed an agreement with them to offer discounted memberships to their members, and as a result, it would have actually undercut a couple of those early stage ones because we made it a rather substantial discount.
Right.
And so I went back to those early clients and said, hey, I promised you A, that you're paying X, and B, that you will never pay more than anyone, or that you'll never pay more than others on this platform.
Right.
We've had a couple that, as a result of this discount are coming in about $20 under you. Would you like it?
Mm. Mhm.
And just offer to match. And in each instance they wrote back and went like, no, we're already not paying enough for this, like, and
That's,
that's like I came
that's
in really really low because like
yeah.
I knew these folks are going to be they're going to be dealing with a less than ideal platform. It is not, this is the version 0.1. and as a result, trying to get additional revenue out of it, it didn't feel right to me.
That's always is a great indicator to see when people are telling you we're not paying enough for this. And pricing products, any product, but SaaS products specifically, is always really, really hard. How did you
Mhm.
determine the price?
Initially, I looked at it and said, "What is two basic seats on Salesforce?" And that was where we capped it.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I wanted it to be affordable to, as I said, solo practitioners and the smallest, brokest not for profits,
Mm,
because I didn't want that to be the issue. If
right.
they didn't understand the need for the product, that's fine.
Mm,
If they already had tools in place, that's fine. But if they're looking at this going, I want this, I need this, and there is absolutely no way I can afford this,
mm,
that's not fine.
right.
And
Right.
so I took the attitude of I'd rather sell this to a couple people for much less
Hmm.
and gradually raise my prices over time until eventually someone pushes back
Hmm.
than come in too high and then try to adjust it down.
And as you
You
go,
know,
you
it's this,
also add more value.
and
So
that's the yeah.
yeah.
It was honestly, it was the same advice that we used to give folks when I did media relations. You know, it is a lot easier to come into an interview a little bit flat and then raise your energy up to meet the room than
Mm,
to try and bring your energy level back down to, everyone else in the room.
yeah. But sometimes the risk is also that if you price it too low, they will think there is no value there. They will think
Yes.
you don't really value yourself enough.
And yeah, that's absolutely true. It's absolutely something that you can stumble on.
Mm.
I know I have.
Yeah, it is definitely one of those things that it's touchy feely many times. There are ways and tools to get to a price, but usually companies will get through iterations of pricing and as they build value and
Yeah.
hear from people and stuff like that. No, that's very cool to hear. Another question related to something we talked about before, technology and government and politics, is a recent Canadian law that came out that social media cannot put in any news outlets. What's your opinion about that? And
Yeah. Yes. The Online News Act was passed recently. Basically says that social or the web giants, it was defined as Google and Meta, cannot share news content without paying and licensing it directly from the producers.
mm,
Google and Facebook have both taken the view of, well, then fine, we just won't share it.
mm,
And it's been interesting to watch that all come into play. There was a lot of pushback when this bill was going through the legislative process. I mean, if you go back and read any of the committee transcripts from either the House or Senate as this was making its way through the process, there were a lot of folks saying that this is exactly what was going to happen. Like, you
mm,
can't require them to pay you in order to require them to share it. If if not sharing that content is within the law, then they can just do that. And at the end of the day, you're going to be the ones to miss out. And we're hearing more and more of that. And there was the wildfires out in BC, and a lot of the smaller outlets were saying like this made it impossible for folks to stay up to date, and
mhm.
everyone goes to Facebook and Google first. It's like, doesn't that on its own say that that was giving you value in terms of distribution? When you're talking about CBC, CTV, Global, yeah, you guys can argue that out. But for smaller publications, independent publishers, like, yes, this has been a tremendous blow, and the ramifications will make themselves very clear over the next year or so, particularly once the bill fully comes into force. Because
Mhm.
as of right now, I believe they have till either December 1st or December 31st before the bill comes into effect. So while Google has already stopped allowing sharing, while Instagram and Facebook aren't allowing you to share news content,
Right.
you still legally could. It's just they're saying, nope, this is the way that we're going to approach this issue, and I think everyone loses in the end.
Yeah.
I don't. like I understand the political calculus behind it. It really comes down to the cultural industry in Quebec. CanCon is a major concern, and ensuring that they're able to get things fun. Like, I get why they went down that path.
But
I don't necessarily think it was the right approach
yeah, it
or
seems to
was done in the right
backfire.
way.
It seems to
Yeah,
backfire on the intent. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I
And I
wonder
mean,
what.
some of that may have just been the approach rather than the bill. Because I mean, yes, there are similarities to the legislation in, I believe it's Australia or New Zealand.
That's
They
what I
did
was
something very
wondering.
similar.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about other countries and why they went that direction.
I think it's because, like, while there have been agreements, brokered in other jurisdictions, I think the approach here was very confrontational right from the start, and like we
Mhm.
talked about with pricing, it's hard to ramp it up or to ramp it down. Like, when you come in at a 10, you can't then back without being seen to back off,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I don't. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes.
yeah. Perfect. Now, we've been through in this discussion a lot of different tips and lessons for founders. What will be one lesson or for founders that you would like to share?
It's going to take a lot longer than you think.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, However, there's that old, like, triple your expenses and cut your revenue by a third, and if that still makes sense, then you uh, triple your timeline.
Mm,
It's going to take longer to raise that round. It's going to take longer to do that rebuild or to launch that new feature. It's just going to happen.
hmm,
Uh,
hmm.
and I mean, I'm great at saying this. I'm not particularly good at living it at times, but understand that this is a long term journey.
Hmm.
There was someone in the indie hacker community that posted something once where it's like, you are 7 to 10 years away from being an overnight success.
Hmm.
And so understand, well, and that's the thing. Like, by the time enough people hear about you that you're an overnight success, it's like, no, I've
Yes,
been doing this for a decade now,
yes.
guys. Like, so yeah, it's going to take a lot longer than you think. Patience, really.
Patience is it's a good one. Absolutely. When was it in this process that you realized, oh, I have something in my hand? This is successful.
I mean, there's been different points along the way that I would say this was a success. Initially launching it was a success.
Hmm.
Just getting it out there and telling people, like, hey, I've got this thing. And then after that, it was landing that first client. I'll never forget it. It was March 17th, 2020. And I remember that because while we were on the call, the market fell about 900 points.
Hmm.
And this was right as everything was shutting down because of COVID.
That's COVID
Uh,
time. Yes.
Folks were like, "Are we even like?" We didn't know if we were going to be alive in a year. And this guy's like, "Yep, I'm signing up for a year." And it's like, as soon as he said that, I'm like, "Well, shit, I need to be here in a year."
Yes.
And so it was a vote of confidence, but it was also like, all right, put up or shut up. Like, will you still be here in a year? And every time we close a new customer, I'm thinking the same thing. Like, all right, you're expecting me to be here this year, and assuming this all goes well,
Mhm.
indefinitely and into the future. Like,
That's
this
great.
is this is something that you can't just kind of go, I'm bored with it, and move on. Like,
Yeah.
you're into it now. You have a responsibility.
It's like being a parent. Now you have a child. You're responsible for him. So now you have clients. You're responsible for them, right?
It's funny you mentioned that. I went full time with PoliTraQ 2 weeks before my son was born.
Oh wow.
So I've
You
been,
have
yeah,
twins. You have twins.
yeah, essentially, yeah. And a very, very supportive wife. But
I'm
yeah,
sure.
I'm noticing more, a lot of those similarities in terms of, you create this thing that you then put out into the world, and you don't have full control anymore.
Hmm.
And you think it might be one thing, but it might grow into something else. And really, all you can do is just kind of give it the best opportunity to succeed and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
And there are going to be days that, are incredible, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe. And then there are going to be days where you're like, how the hell am I going to get through tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just try not to get too high on the highs, try not to get too low on the lows,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
enjoy the journey, because you know who knows, 10 years from now, maybe we sell this, or we go public, or whatever it is, we exit the company, and then they're gone. And it's kind of like, I'm watching my son now, like, learn to walk and talk and all this sort of other stuff. And already there are little mannerisms or traits that he had, 6 months ago, that aren't there now.
Yeah.
And you do miss them. You
Mm.
don't have the time to realize that you miss them, because there's this, the baby is gone, but now there's this cool little toddler, and
Yes.
all. And it's kind of like that with the business. Like, I know at a certain point when we exit this, like, I'm going to miss this.
Mm.
And so just try and acknowledge it while it's happening.
So, with that saying, in that journey, what's the one thing that you like the most and the one thing you like the least?
So the thing I like the most is when I can see that the product is resonating with someone. When I, go to push an update, and I can watch the server logs. And I've done it on a few occasions where I've sat there for a minute and just kind of watched, and you see all this traffic going through,
Hmm.
and you realize, like, that is people that are seeing value in the product, that they are choosing to pay you for,
Yes.
and they are getting use out of it. It means that there's something that they're getting out of this, that they're able to justify that. Like, that's an incredible feeling.
Yes. Absolutely. Hmm.
When you fail to hit that mark, and when a customer churns because, yeah, it just wasn't really working for us, or we're not active enough to make it worthwhile. Like, those, you do like, it hurts, because
Mm.
it's a you had that opportunity to show value to them, and to deliver,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it does feel a bit like failure. Joel would be the first one to attest. Like, I don't celebrate new wins, but when we lose a client, I definitely feel it.
Yeah.
And, like, on the same token, you just have to, buck up, and do your job, and move on. But
Absolutely.
it stings, because that means that I didn't do what I was supposed to do.
Mm. So, if you would have to give one tip to founders to avoid, like a mistake that you made, and you were like, "Don't do that because you must avoid that," what would it be?
Just one, eh? No, I mean, there's always going to be mistakes that come up. I think as long as it's not fatal, like, it's a learning opportunity. It might be a very expensive learning opportunity. It might
Hmm.
be an incredibly stressful learning opportunity.
Hmm.
But things that feel fatal in the moment aren't necessarily going to be fatal. Uh, things that feel like a 10 out of 10 unsurvivable, you might look back on and go, yeah, that was really inconvenient. Like, there
Hmm.
was one from our first year where, we got in a lick of trouble, and, I was like, I'm shutting this down. I'm done. I'm done. And it was
Hmm.
actually my former boss who's like, no, you're not, because other people have paid you for this, and you owe it to them.
Hmm.
And I appreciate it, because he just told it to me straight, like, shut up, and do your job. And he was right, because I look back on it now and go, yeah, that was mighty inconvenient. But if it had ended there, that would have sucked far more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes we don't see it when we're in it, and we need that other voice to tell
Yeah,
us that.
yeah. That, and
Perfect.
if I had to give one piece of it, find another voice to, because
Huh?
if you're someone who's really driven and passionate about an issue, those are all great traits, but they
Hmm.
can also lead you to get obsessive about something. Like, when you don't go outside for a week because, damn it, I need to get this like, no, it will still be there tomorrow. Just
Right.
see sunlight.
Right. Right. Perfect. If you would want to give a shout out to any product out there, which product would it be?
Andre Yurkin, he has a product called Beam. BEAM. It's
Mm-hmm.
getbeam.ai, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a plugin for Mac OS for GPT. So you can set up various profiles or personas that you can then use basically at the system level within a Mac. So at one shortcut away, I can pull it up and I can say, all right, today I want to use my assistant profile to write this letter, or I'm doing some coding, so I want to switch it to my JavaScript one so
Ah,
that it
interesting.
will give me, more tailored and focused advice. And it does it all on your computer and through the GPT AI or API rather than
Interesting.
through. So like I paid for the product a couple months ago, and in being able to drop GPT Pro, like the chat, professional version, and just go with the API, I've already broken even on the cost. I'm using it 10 times more, and I'm getting far more out of this incredible tool because it's now a fingertip away rather than having to go to the
Mm-hmm.
site, figure it out, copy it. Like it's an incredible tool. The guy's done an amazing job with it. I highly recommend it to anyone who likes GPT and uses a Mac. Like
That sounds really interesting. I'm going to try it myself.
it,
And
it's an yeah.
it kind of reminds me of, I mean, especially for founders that you have so many hats that you have to wear. I can see where you will have all these profiles. It reminds me those cars that they have different settings for all the mirrors and the seats
Yep.
for different people. I always want one of these for my car because each one of my daughters is different height. It's always moving around.
Yep.
So I can see absolutely how ChatGPT can help on that. Or Beam can help with that for ChatGPT. Thank you for
Yep.
that call. This is really cool. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like
Um,
I've recommended it to a lot of people so far. It's an amazing product.
mhm,
Very, very
mhm.
happy. And the guy
Nice,
deserves a lot of credit for it.
nice, nice. Who knows? Maybe we'll be able to get him on the show.
Absolutely.
So, if people want to reach out to you and find more about you and PoliTraQ, where they can reach out to?
Yeah, so PoliTraQ, we're at www.politrac.com. We do also have the .ca domain, but most of our business is done through .com. We're on Twitter at PoliTraQ. We're on LinkedIn also. We've got a great LinkedIn page there. And then if anyone, for whatever reason, was interested in reaching out to me, LinkedIn or Chris at politrac.com.
And I should mention that it's PoliTraQ with a Q at the end.
Yes, I should probably explain the bizarre spelling.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I built PoliTraQ, of course, while working at Queen's University, and it was a running joke that if you take any combination of letters and throw a Q in there somewhere, it either exists as a research unit or as a piece of software or as a shared service or someone within the institution.
I
And
see.
so
Love
as I
it.
was putting it together, I'm
Mhm.
thinking, I'm like, well, it's tracking political engagement, so PoliTraQ almost works in terms of phonetically. So just throw the Q on the end there, and
Mhm.
I did a pitch competition that was associated with Queens, and it was the first time a lot of my coworkers had found out I was working on this, and everyone came back. It's like, can you stop being on brand? Like just 1 minute, just put the brand guidelines away.
Yeah.
Be a human being.
Nice.
But
Nice. Well, it's nice that you kept the IP, so that's good for you that you're able, to make a
absolutely.
company out of that. And the funny thing I always think about Queenstown University, if people don't know, it's actually not in Kingston. Sorry, it's not in Queenstown. It's in Kingston.
Yep.
So Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario.
Yep.
Yeah, very nice. It was really a pleasure to have you on the show, Chris.
Thank
I
you so
really
much for
enjoyed.
having me. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, and I wish you a lot of success with PoliTraQ. I'm looking forward to see where you're going with this and your huge success. Your overnight success. So we'll
Much
we'll see in a few
appreciated.
years.
Yeah, see you in a few years when that overnight success hits.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today for the Beyond Product podcast. My name is Moshe Mikanovsky, and I really enjoyed this discussion today. I hope to see you again. Take care. Bye bye.